Tonight, we journey back through the mists of time to the sun-drenched marble of Olympia, to witness the sacred silence and the golden dust of the first great games. So come in from the night. Leave the noise of the world outside the heavy oak doors. You are safe here in the library. Nothing can touch you now. If you wish to find your way back to this sanctuary another night, simply invite yourself to return by subscribing. Take your place by the fire. Now, settle in. The volume for tonight is already waiting, bound in sun-bleached linen, smelling faintly of dry olive leaves and ancient stone. Let us open the cover. Our story begins. The golden dust of the Peloponnese rises in a slow, swirling dance, caught in the heavy stillness of a midsummer afternoon. Imagine the narrow mountain passes where the air hangs thick and sweet with the scent of wild thyme and sun-baked pine needles. In these high places, the world feels as though it is holding its breath, waiting for a sound that has not been heard for 4 long years. And then, there it is, the rhythmic of wooden staves striking the dry earth. Thump, thump, down the winding paths of the peninsula, through the olive groves where the silver leaves shimmer like cooling metal, the messengers are coming. They are the spondophoroi, the sacred truce bearers, and they carry a power that no king or general can claim. Their robes are white, bleached by the relentless sun, until they glow with an almost ethereal light against the deep ochre of the soil. Each man wears a crown of olive leaves, their greenery already beginning to wilt and curl in the oppressive heat, yet they represent a promise that is fresher than the morning dew. Listen closely to the sound of their approach. It is not the frantic gallop of a war horse or the clatter of bronze shields. It is a measured, deliberate pace. Each step they take is a quiet prayer, a ripple moving through the troubled waters of Greece. As they pass through small, mud-brick villages, the inhabitants emerge from the cool shadows of their doorways. The smell of baking bread and roasting goat meat mingles with the sharp, acidic scent of sweat and anticipation. These villagers have spent years listening for the sounds of raiding parties, for the screams of the dying and the crackle of burning thatch. But today, the air is different. The messenger arrives at the village square, his voice low and raspy from the dust of the road. He does not shout. He whispers the words of the proclamation, letting them drift like incense smoke over the gathered crowd. The sacred truce has been declared. The akacheria has begun. It is a word that tastes like honey on a parched tongue. It means the laying down of arms. It means the cooling of tempers. It means that for a few precious months, the gods have commanded the world to be still. You can feel the physical shift in the atmosphere as the news takes hold. It is like the moment the wind dies down before a summer storm, or the heavy velvet silence that follows a long fever. In the distance, the jagged peaks of the mountains seem to soften, their sharp edges blurred by the shimmering heat haze. The messengers move on, their figures shrinking into the vastness of the landscape, leaving behind a silence that is not empty, but full of a strange, tentative peace. As the spondophoroi travel further, the transition from the chaos of war to the silence of the sanctuary becomes a palpable thing. a weight from the shoulders of the land. For years the valleys have echoed the discord of clashing iron and the harsh shouts of hoplites in the phalanx. The very earth has been soaked in the bitter, metallic tang of blood and the acrid smoke of scorched fields. But now, as truce spreads like a cooling shadow, those sounds begin to fade into memory. Imagine a soldier, his hands calloused from the grip of a spear, standing on a hillside overlooking the distant shimmering blue of the Ionian Sea. He feels the rough texture of the wool of his tunic, damp with perspiration, clinging to his skin. He reaches down and unbuckles his greaves, the bronze plates hitting the grass with a dull, heavy thud. The silence that follows is profound. It is the silent, finally slowing its beat. He can hear the cicadas now, a constant, vibrating hum that fills the ears until it becomes part of the silence itself. It is a sound that speaks of heat, of ancient stones, and of the slow, inevitable passage of time. The path toward the sanctuary of Olympia is long, and the heat of the Greek summer is a living entity that walks beside every traveler. The sun is a relentless eye in a sky of bleached cobalt, baking the earth until it cracks into 1,000 tiny canyons. The smell of the landscape is intense and intoxicating. It is the dry, peppery aroma of crushed oregano underfoot, the resinous tang of the cypress trees, and the faint, salty breath of the sea drifting inland on a dying breeze. As the pilgrims begin their journey, leaving behind their cities and their quarrels, they enter a world where the only law is the law of the sanctuary. The rough stone of the road feels warm through the thin leather of their sandals, a constant reminder of the earth's ancient energy. They carry with them the sense of their homes, the smell of cedar chests, of hearth fires, and of the oil used to anoint their bodies. But as they draw closer to the sacred grove of Altis, these scents are overtaken by something more primal. The air begins to carry the scent of the Alpheios River, a coolness that promises relief from the burning sky. It is the smell of damp silt, of reeds swaying in the slow current, and of deep, shaded pools where the water rim hold even in the height of the dog days. The transition is almost complete. The noise of the marketplace, the debates of the assembly, and the cries of the battlefield are all hushed. In their place is the soft rustle of the wind through the leaves of the sacred plane trees and the distant, muffled sound of a flute being played by a lonely shepherd. This is the threshold of the sacred. The heat of the summer has stripped away the pretenses of men, leaving them raw and expectant. Each breath taken in this stillness feels heavier, more significant. The dust on their skin is a fine, white powder, a veil that marks them as travelers in a timeless land. They move to a heart of the sanctuary, not as citizens of Athens or Sparta or Corinth, but as humble shadows seeking the grace of the Father of gods. The sanctuary itself waits in the distance, a collection of white marble and weathered limestone, nestled in the green embrace of the valley. The sunlight reflects off the temple roofs with a blinding intensity, making the structures appear to vibrate against the stillness of the trees. There is no urgency here. The truce has carved out a space in time where the clock of the world has stopped ticking. Feel the stillness in your own limbs as you imagine standing at the edge of the altar. The ground beneath you, with fallen leaves and the fine dust of centuries. The heat is a warm blanket, urging you to close your eyes and listen to the secrets of the earth. You can hear the faint, rhythmic creak of a distant water wheel and the occasional, sharp cry of a hawk circling high above in the shimmering blue. These sounds do not break the silence, they define it. The sacred truce is more than a legal agreement, it is a spiritual exhaling. The messengers have done their work, and now the land itself begins to heal. The scars of the trenches and the blackened remains of the orchards are hidden by the golden light of the afternoon. In this moment, the only thing that matters is the slow, steady pulse of the sanctuary. The smell of incense begins to drift from the altars, a sweet, heavy fragrance of frankincense and myrrh that clings to the humid air. It mingles with the scent of roasting meat and the earthy aroma of the riverbank, creating a sensory tapestry that is uniquely Olympia. Everything is slow, everything is quiet. The transition is complete. The world of men has fallen away, and the world of the gods has opened its doors. The heat of the summer remains, a constant, shimmering presence, but it no longer feels oppressive. It feels like an initiation, a burning away of the old self to prepare for the glory that is to come. As the sun begins its slow descent toward the horizon, casting long, violet shadows across the valley, the silence deepens. It is a silence that speaks of ancient things, of heroes and myths, and of the enduring power of peace. The dust of the Altis is not like the dust of the common road. It does not cling to the skin with the grit of a weary journey, but rather settles with the softness of a benediction. As you step across the boundary of the sacred precinct, leaving the noise of the encampments behind, you can feel the texture of the ground change beneath your sandals. It is a fine, powdery silt, ground down by the slow passage of centuries and the tread of a million hopeful feet. Here, in the shadow of the great temples, the earth itself feels ancient and alive, holding the memory of every libation poured and every prayer whispered into the heavy air. Walking through the sacred grove of Zeus is an act of slow discovery. The path is not straight and paved, but winding and organic, guided by the placement of the sacred trees and the scattered monuments of the past. To your left and right, the bronze statues of victors stand like silent sentinels, their metal skin darkened to a deep, rich brown by the oxidation of time. In the fading light of the afternoon, they seem to watch you. You might reach out a hand to brush against the cold, unyielding surface of a bronze calf or the rough, weathered stone of a pedestal. The stone is still warm from the day's sun, radiating a gentle heat that seeps into your fingertips, a physical connection to the fire of the sky that has now retreated behind the western hills. The air in the grove is thick with a complex layering of scents. There is the dry, dusty smell of the earth, parched and thirsty, waiting for the evening dew. Beneath that, there is the sharp, resinous tang of the cypress trees that line the edges of the sanctuary, standing tall and dark like funeral spears against the sky. and weaving through it all is the faint, lingering aroma of burning fat and roasted meat from the great altar of Zeus, a smell that is both savory and sacred, a reminder that here the gods and men feast together. As you walk deeper into the altis, the sounds of the outside world are swallowed by the density of the atmosphere. The silence here is not empty, it is heavy and expectant. You can hear the crunch of your own footsteps, a sound that seems disproportionately loud in the stillness. Occasionally, a bird flits between the branches of the wild olive trees, its wings creating a soft, frantic fluttering that dies away as quickly as it began. The wild olive, the cotinos, grows here with a gnarled and twisted beauty. Its bark is rough and gray, like the skin of an old elephant, and its leaves are small and silver green, shimmering in the tide of thousands of tiny coins. It was from such a tree that the first wreaths were cut, and looking at it now, you can feel the weight of that tradition. It is a humble plant, yet it holds the power to turn a mortal man into a legend. The transition from date in the altis is a slow, violet bruising of the sky. The shadows lengthen and merge, pooling around the bases of the columns and filling the spaces between the statues with a velvety darkness. It is in this blue hour, before the moon fully rises, that the architecture begins to change. The massive Doric columns of the Temple of Zeus, which looked so solid and imposing in the harsh noon light, now seem to float, their edges blurring into the gloom. But as darkness deepens, another structure begins to assert its presence, glowing with a ghostly, pale luminescence. This is the Peloponnesian, the circular tholos that stands as a testament to the ambition of kings. While the other temples are rectangular and heavy, rooted firmly in the earth, the Peloponnesian is a thing of grace and curves. As the moon crests the surrounding hills, casting its silver net over the sanctuary, the marble of the Peloponnesian catches the light and amplifies it. The building seems to drink in the moonlight, storing it within the stone, until the columns themselves appear to be made of solidified beams of lunar radiance. Walk slowly around the perimeter of this circular wonder. The 18 Ionic columns that ring the exterior are slender and elegant, their fluted sides creating vertical lines of shadow and light that shift as you move. Unlike the masculine, heavy Doric order, these columns have a feminine grace, topped with scrolls that look like the uncurling fronds of a fern or the horns of a ram. The marble here is cool to the touch, having shed the heat of the day more quickly than the darker stone of the older temples. Press your palm against the smooth curve of a column and feel the chill of the night seeping into your skin. It is a refreshing, clean sensation, like drinking cold water from a mountain spring. Inside the colonnade, the shadows are deep and impenetrable, hiding the chryselephantines of Philip and his family. We cannot see the glint of gold or the creamy luster of ivory in this dark, but we know they are there, silent figures waiting in the gloom. The circular shape of the building creates a strange acoustic effect. If you were to whisper a secret against the wall on one side, it would travel along the curved stone and arrive clearly at the ear of someone standing on the opposite side. It is a building designed for secrets, for the intimate conversations of power and dynasty. In the moonlight, the Philippine looks less like a temple and more like a crown set down upon the grass, a ringing of white fire that speaks of a different kind of divinity, the divinity of kings who wish to be gods. The contrast between the rigid, rectangular geometry of the rest of the altis and this perfect glowing circle is jarring and beautiful. It represents the breaking of tradition, the intrusion of the new world upon the old. And yet, under the softening gaze of the moon, it fits. The white marble shines with a purity that cleanses the mind. You can smell the faint scent of night-blooming jasmine that has been planted near the base of the structure, a sweet, heady perfume that rises in the cool air and mixes with the smell of the dampening grass. The night air has brought a moisture that settles on the marble, making it slick and shiny, reflecting the stars that are now beginning to prick through the canopy of the night sky. Stone, no matter how beautiful, is dead. It is the trees that hold the true soul of the sanctuary. Turning away from the glowing marble of the Philippine, you find yourself standing beneath the spreading canopy of the ancient plane trees. These are the giants of the Altis, living monuments that have stood witness to the games for longer than any building. Their trunks are massive, thick with the girth of centuries, their bark peeling away in puzzle piece of gray, tan, and cream. This mottled texture gives them the appearance of camouflage, as if they are trying to hide their immense age from the eyes of men. Stand very still and listen. A breeze has picked up, flowing down from the mountains of Arcadia and funneling through the valley of the Alfeos. When it hits the broad, hand-shaped leaves of the plane trees, it creates a sound that's entirely unique to this place. It is not a rustle, and it is not a roar. It is a whisper, a sibilant, dry hissing that sounds like 1,000 voices speaking all at once in a language that has been forgotten. Sh. The leaves rub against each other, dry edge against dry edge, creating a friction that mimics the sound of soft rainfall or the hushing of a mother calming a child. In the silence of the Sacred Truce, this sound becomes the dominant voice of the night. It is easy to believe, standing here in the dark, that these are the voices of the ancestors, the spirits of the athletes and heroes who once walked this same ground. They are whispering theirs to the wind, entrusting their memories to the trees that will live them all. Look up into the canopy. The moonlight filters through the layers of leaves, creating a shifting, kaleidoscopic pattern on the ground at your feet. The shadows dance, sway, morphing into shapes that look like running figures, or the wheels of chariots, or the raised arms of a victor. The movement is hypnotic. The leaves are never truly still. They are constantly trembling, reacting to the slightest shift in the air currents. It is a living, breathing ceiling that shelters the sacred ground. The air beneath the plane trees feels different. It is cooler, damper, and richer with the scent of organic decay. You can smell the rotting leaves of years past that have become part of the soil, a musk that is earthy and deep. It is the smell of the cycle of life, of growth and death and rebirth. The trees drop their leaves, and the leaves feed the earth, and the earth feeds the trees. It is a slow, silent rhythm that continues regardless of the wars and truces of men. Reach out and touch the trunk of the nearest plane tree. The wood is cool and hard, but if you press your ear against it, you might imagine you can hear the slow, hydraulic hum of the sap rising within, the lifeblood of the tree moving in the dark. The bark feels smooth in the pale patches and rough where it is peeling, a map of textures that tells the story of droughts and floods, of harsh winters and blistering summers. These trees have drunk the blood of sacrifices and the sweat of champions. They are the true guardians of the Altis. As the wind sighs through the branches again, the sound swells and then fades, a rhythmic breathing that lulls the mind into a trance. The architecture of the Peloponnesian may glow with the brilliance of man's achievement, and the temple of Zeus may awe with its scale, but the whispering leaves of the plane trees speak of something more enduring. They speak of the persistence of nature, of the quiet, green force that watches over the follies and the glories of the human race. In the heart of the sanctuary, by the dust of history and the white bones of temples, the trees are the only things that are truly, vibrantly awake. They stand in the moonlight, whispering their secrets to the empty air, waiting for the sun to rise and the games to begin again. To enter the palestra is to step into a box of echoes, a square world walled off from the chaos of the sanctuary by a perimeter of silent, fluted columns. The morning light here does not flood in. It creeps, spilling slowly over the red-tiled roofs of the colonnades, and painting the central courtyard in stripes of pale gold and deep, cool shadow. The ground beneath your feet changes again. You have left the soft, grassy earth of the groves and the marble pavement of the temples. Here, the earth is beaten hard, packed down by the weight of 1,000 lunges and the relentless pacing of men preparing for war in the guise of sport. But in the center, in the open air, lies the scamma, the pit of sand. It waits, beige canvas, rippled only by the wind, waiting to be churned by the violence of the wrestle. The silence of the palestra is deceptive. It is a thick, resonant silence that seems to hum with the memory of noise. Stand in the shadow of a column, leaning your back against the cool, rough limestone, and listen. The architecture is designed to trap sound, to fold it back upon itself. Even now, in the quiet hours before the heat of the day fully descends, you can hear the ghost of training. It is in the way the wind whistles through the gaps in the roof tiles, sounding like the sharp intake of breath before a lift. It is in the dull thud of a falling pine cone hitting the packed earth, mimicking the heavy impact of a body thrown to the ground. The walls are stained with the invisible residue of effort. The air here smells different than the rest of the Altis. It is not the scent of incense or pine, but something more human, more raw. It is the lingering, copper scent of old sweat that has soaked into the porous stone, mingled with the dry, mineral dust of the sand pit. It is a smell that triggers a primal instinct, a tightening of the gut. As the athlete walks through the double doors, the heavy iron hinges groan, a low, mournful sound that reverberates around the courtyard. Every footfall on the hard-packed earth sends a small shockwave through the silence, a declaration of presence. He moves toward the changing rooms, the apodyterion, where the air is cooler and still. Here, the stone benches are worn smooth, polished to a glass-like shine by the countless bodies that have sat upon them over the centuries. Your hand along the edge of the stone. It is cold, draining the heat from your fingertips. In the corners, the shadows are deep and blue, hiding the discarded sandals and the folded cloaks of those who have come before. There is a solemnity here, a hush that feels almost religious. This is not a place for laughter or idle chatter. It is a place of transformation. The man who enters is a citizen, a son, a farmer, or a prince. The man who leaves, walking out into the sun of the courtyard, is nothing but flesh and will, stripped of all rank and title, reduced to the purity of the athlete. He reaches for the small ceramic vessel that hangs from a leather thong at his waist. It is the lekithos, the jar of oil. Feel the weight of it in your hand. It is made of fine, pale clay, painted with black figures of runners and jumpers, their limbs frozen in eternal motion. The clay is cool and smooth, possessing a dusty texture that contrasts with the slickness of the treasure it holds inside. He pulls the stopper with a soft, sucking pop, a sound that is small but distinct in the quiet room, and then the pouring begins. Listen to the liquid melody of the olive oil leaving the narrow neck of the jar. Glug, glug, glug. It is a sound, heavy and rich. The oil falls into the cupped palm of the athlete's hand, pooling there like liquid sunlight. It is the color of deep amber, green at the edges where the light catches it. It smells intensely of the grove, peppery aroma that is sharp and clean. It is the blood of the olive, pressed from the fruit and stored in the dark, waiting for this moment of contact. He brings his hands together and the sound changes. It becomes a wet, rhythmic slapping sound as he rubs between his palms, warming it, breaking down its thickness. Slap, rub, rub. The friction generates heat, releasing the scent even more powerfully into the stagnant air of the changing room. Then he applies it to his skin. This is not a gentle caress. It is a vigorous, deliberate armoring, the sound wet and heavy as his hands glide over the muscles of the thigh, the curve of the shoulder, the ridges of the back. You can hear the squelch of the oil, the slick friction of skin on skin. He is coating himself in the earth's bounty, sealing his pores against the dust and the sun. The oil makes his skin gleam in the dim light, turning him into a living statue of bronze. He works the oil deep into the sinews, kneading the muscles that will soon be pushed to their breaking point. It is a massage that awakens the body, sending a signal to every nerve ending that the time for rest is over. The oil serves a dual purpose. It protects the skin from the biting sun that will soon high overhead, and it makes the body slippery, elusive. In the wrestle, a limb coated in oil is like a river eel. It is there and then it is gone. But there is a counter-ritual to come. Once the body is glistening and sleek, the athlete walks out into the courtyard, into the blinding brightness of the scamma. He reaches down, digging his oil-slicked fingers into the fine, pale dust of the pit. The sound of the dry sand over the oiled skin is a rasping whisper. It is the sound of texture returning. The dust clings to the oil, creating a matte layer, a second skin that provides grip. The golden gleam is muted, replaced by a ghostly pallor. The athlete is now a creature of the earth, covered in the very soil he will fight upon. This mixture of oil, sweat, and dust creates a slurry, a mud that will cake on the body, a physical testament to the struggle. It smells of wet clay and iron, a scent that is the very definition of the palestra. But the physical preparation is merely the outer shell of the ritual. The true work happens in the silence between the heartbeats. As the athlete stands there, coated in the armor of oil and dust, he begins the descent into the inner citadel of the mind. This is the ancient mindfulness, a focus sharp, it cuts through the noise of the world like a knife. Imagine the noise of the crowd outside the walls, the shouting merchants, the laughing pilgrims, the crying children. Now imagine a heavy door slamming shut. The sound is cut off. That is what happens inside the athlete's head. He withdraws his senses from the periphery. He no longer hears the wind in the colonnade. He no longer sees the other men stretching in the shadows. His vision tunnels. The world narrows down to a single point of focus. He closes his eyes. He listens to the rhythm of his own breath. Out, out. It is the sound of a bellows stoking a fire. Each exhalation, he pushes away doubt. He pushes away the fear of failure, the fear of injury, the fear of shame. He envisions his mind as a calm pool of water, perfectly still, reflecting nothing but the sky. If a thought ripples the surface, a worry about his opponent, a memory of a past defeat, he acknowledges it and then lets it settle, waiting for the water to become glass again. He feels the ground beneath his feet. He curls his toes, gripping the earth through the thin layer of sand. He is rooting himself. He is becoming immovable. He visualizes the energy of the earth rising up through his legs, filling his central hard power. This is the Andrea, the courage that is not loud or boasting, but silent and enduring. It is the quiet confidence of the mountain that does not fear the storm. His heart rate slows. Thump, thump. It is a slow, heavy drumbeat, and controlled. He is conserving every ounce of energy. He is a coiled spring, a bowstring pulled taut to the very edge of snapping. The tension is not painful. It is electric. It is the potential for violence held in perfect check. In this state of heightened awareness, the senses become supernatural. He can feel the shift in the wind direction by the cooling sensation on his left cheek. He can smell the faint, acrid scent of anxiety coming from a competitor 10 paces away. He can hear the scratch of a lizard moving across the roof tiles. But he does not react. He observes. He is a watcher in the tower, waiting for the signal. The mental preparation is a shedding of the self. The man with the name and the family history disappears. In his place stands the agonist, the one who struggles. He has become a vessel for the contest. The silence in his mind is absolute. It is a white room with no doors and no windows, only the burning light of purpose. He opens his eyes. The pupils are dilated, dark pools that take in everything. The world seems sharper, clearer, the colors more vivid. The red of the roof tiles burns, the white of the columns pierces. The silence of the palestra is no longer an absence of sound, it is a waiting presence. The ritual is complete. The oil is on the skin, the dust is on the oil, the mind is a razor. He steps forward, the sand crunching under his heel, walking out of the shadows and into the blinding arena of the day. The massive bronze doors of the temple groan as they are pushed open, a sound that is deep and resonant, vibrating in the hollow of your chest. To cross this threshold is to leave the world of men behind and step into the private chamber of a god. The transition is blinding. You have walked from the searing, white-hot brightness of the Peloponnesian noon, sacred gloom. For a moment you are blind. Your eyes strain against the sudden darkness, swimming in a sea of shadows. But then, slowly, the shapes begin to emerge. You are standing in the nave of the Temple of Zeus, the heart of the ancient world. The air here is cooler, trapped between thick walls of limestone and stucco, but it is not empty. It is filled with a presence so immense, so overwhelming, that it forces the breath from your lungs. As your vision adjusts, you do not look forward, you look up, and then you look up further, and still you must look higher. Before you sits the master of the thunderbolt, the king of the gods. He is not a statue, he is a geography, a mountain carved into the shape of a man. Phidias, the sculptor, has created a giant. If the god were to rise from his throne, he would shatter the roof of the temple and stand shoulder to shoulder with the clouds. But he is seated, a posture of eternal, terrifying rest. He fills the space so completely that the massive columns of the temple aisle seem like mere reeds beside him. You are standing at the level of the podium, a raised of blue-black Eleusinian limestone. Before you are the god's feet, resting on a footstool adorned with golden lions. The feet are colossal, the toes perfect and smooth, fashioned from ivory that glows with the soft, creamy luster of human skin. The realism is uncanny. In the dim light, the ivory seems to possess a pulse, a warmth that defies the cold nature of the material. You feel a sudden, irrational urge to reach out and touch the hem of the golden robe that drapes over his ankles, to feel the cold bite of the metal against your fingertips. But you are held back by an invisible wall of awe. The throne itself is a labyrinth of artistry, a universe of detail that could consume a lifetime of study. It is constructed ebony, dark and mysterious as the night sky, of ivory, pale as the moon, and of gold, burning like the sun. Precious stones, emeralds, garnets, and sapphires are embedded in the wood, catching the flickering light of the oil lamps and winking like watching eyes. Animals are carved into the legs of the throne, sphinxes with riddles on their lips, and winged victories that seem ready to take flight into the shadowy rafters. But your gaze is drawn inevitably upward, past the intricate folds of the golden himation that collects, past the broad, muscular expanse of his ivory chest, to the face of Zeus. It is a visage of supreme calm. The brow is wide and unlined, the nose straight and strong. His beard is a cascading river of gold, thick curls of metal that catch the light and scatter it in 1,000 directions. His eyes are set with precious stones, dark and penetrating, staring out over the heads of the pilgrims, over the walls of the sanctuary, perhaps even over the curvature of the earth itself. There is no anger in this face, only a boundless, terrifying serenity. To stand before it is to feel the crushing weight of your own mortality. You are a speck of dust floating in the presence of eternity. The air in the temple is thick, almost liquid. It resists your movement. It is heavy with a scent that is unique to this holy place, a complex perfume that has permeated the stone blocks for decades. The primary note is incense, frankincense and myrrh, imported from the distant sands of Arabia. It burns in bronze tripods, sending thin, blue ribbons of smoke spiraling up toward the cedar coffered ceiling. The smoke hangs in the air, a hazy veil that softens the hard edges of the architecture and makes the golden statue appear to shimmer and breathe. But beneath the sharp, spicy tang of the incense there is another smell. It is earthy, rich, and slightly rancid. It is the smell of olive oil. In the dry heat of Attica, ivory would crack, but here in the damp valley of Olympia, it needs protection from the moisture, and so a great shallow pool of black limestone has been sunk into the floor before the statue, filled to the brim with pure olive oil. This pool is a stroke of genius, both practical and theatrical. The oil preserves the ivory, keeping the god's skin supple and whole, but it also acts as a mirror. In the gloom of the naos, the black oil, the light from the high windows, and the flickering lamps, casting a rippling, watery illumination upward onto the face of the statue. The light dances across the golden beard and the ivory cheeks, giving the god the appearance of subtle motion. It looks as though he is shifting his weight, as though a thought is passing behind those jeweled eyes. The smell of the oil is heavy and comforting, a scent of the kitchen and the home magnified to divine proportions. It grounds the supernatural spectacle in the fruits of the earth. The gold itself has a scent. It is a metallic, cold aroma that tastes like copper on the back of the tongue. There is so much of it here. Ton upon ton of hammered gold sheets draping the god's body. In the semi-darkness, the gold does not glitter cheaply. It glows with a deep, sullen fire. It absorbs the shadows and radiates a low-frequency light that's to come from within the metal itself. The contrast between the warm, organic creaminess of the ivory skin and the hard, imperishable sheen of the gold clothing creates a sensory dissonance that is hypnotic. Your eyes trace the line where the two materials meet, the gold braid clasping the ivory wrist, the gold wreath resting on the ivory hair. It is a marriage of the living and the eternal. And then there is the sound, or rather, the feeling of sound. The temple is never truly silent. It is filled with the hum of 1,000 prayers, a low-frequency vibration that you feel in your teeth and in the soles of your feet before you hear it with your ears. The pilgrims who enter here do not shout. They do not speak in normal conversational tones. They whisper. They murmur. They weep softly. Imagine the sound of a beehive on a summer afternoon, a constant, droning thrum that has no beginning and no end. That is the sound of the Golden Temple. It is a tapestry of languages, Dorian Greek, Ionian, Aeolian, and the rougher tongues of the barbarians who have come to gaze upon the wonder. They whisper petitions for health, for victory in the games, for the birth of a son, for the lifting of a curse. These whispers drift up from the floor like the smoke of the incense, gathering in the high vaulted ceiling until the air itself seems to be made of words. The acoustic of the temple is strange. The massive volume of the statue and the heavy draperies of the interior absorb sharp noises, leaving only the low, resonant tones. A sob from a woman kneeling by a pillar sounds like the cracking of a branch. The shuffle of sandals on the stone floor sounds like the rustle of dry leaves. But the prayers are a physical pressure. You can feel the intensity of the desire in this room. Every person here wants something. Every person here is begging for a fragment of the God's power. This collective yearning creates a static charge in the atmosphere. The hair on your arms stands up, not from cold, but from electricity of belief. You are standing in a battery of spiritual energy. The pilgrims are pressed together, shoulder to shoulder in the gloom, yet each is alone in their communion with the image. You can hear the rhythmic clicking of prayer beads, the soft thud of knees hitting the stone, the rustle of fabric as someone prostrates themselves fully, laying their face against the cold floor. As you stand there, bathed in the scent of oil and frankincense, watched by the jeweled eyes of the giant, the hum of the prayers begins to sync with your own heartbeat. Thrum, thrum. The boundary between you and the crowd dissolves. You are part of the stream. You are part of the great, desperate, beautiful plea of humanity reaching up toward the divine. The heavy air presses against your skin like a warm blanket. It is suffocating, yet comforting. It is the feeling of being in the womb of the universe, dark and safe, yet terrified of the power that lies just outside. Looking up at the face of Zeus again, you realize that he hears it all. The statue is designed to receive this sound. The slight tilt of the head, the way the ears are carved, he is listening. The hum of the thousand prayers is not noise to him. It is sustenance. It is the fuel that keeps the gold shining and the ivory warm. In the silence that is not silence, in the darkness that is filled with gold, you close your eyes and let the atmosphere wash over you. You breathe in the ancient dust, the sweet smoke, the heavy oil. You listen to the whisper of the world, and for a moment, just a moment, you think you hear the statue breathe back. A deep, tectonic sigh that vibrates through the floor and settles in the marrow of your bones. The god is here. The dawn does not break over Olympia. It seeps in, a slow, gray tide rising from the river valley to reclaim the world from the night. Before the sun has even crested the jagged spine of the eastern mountains, the air changes. The heavy, sweet smoke of the evening's sacrifices has settled into the damp grass, replaced by a scent that is sharp, cold, and clean. It is the smell of dew on limestone and the green, raw breath of waking pine trees. Stand now at the western edge of the stadium. Here lies the entrance, a vaulted passage known to the ancients simply as the crypte. In this pre-dawn hour, It appears as a dark, hungry mouth set into the earth, portal between the sacred sanctuary of the altus and the profane arena of the contest. The light hits it first not as a beam, but as a subtle shift in contrast. The stones of the archway, cut from rough, porous shell limestone, begin to separate themselves from the shadows. They are cool and gray, drinking in the moisture of the morning mist that clings to the ground like a phantom ocean. Watch the very first true ray of sunlight as it finds its way over the hills. It is a pale, lemon-colored lance that strikes the top of the embankment. It does not warm the earth yet. It merely illuminates the dew. Millions of tiny droplets on the wild grasses suddenly ignite, sparkling with a cold, diamond fire. This light creeps down the slope, inch by inch, silent and inevitable, until it reaches the stone threshold of the tunnel. There is a profound stillness here. The crowds have not yet gathered in their thousands. The shouting hawkers are asleep. The only sound is the dripping of water, condensation falling from the stone arch onto the hard earth below. Drip, drip. It marks the time like a water clock. The dust motes, disturbed by the waking wind, begin to dance in that single shaft of light, swirling in slow, hypnotic patterns. They look like tiny stars in a draught, floating in the liminal space between the dark tunnel and the brightening world outside. This is the quietest moment the stadium will know. It is a silence that feels fragile, stretched thin over the anticipation of what is to come. It is the deep breath before the scream. To walk into the crypty is to step out of time. As you leave the growing light of the morning and pass under the heavy stone vault, temperature drops instantly. It is a physical shock, a shiver that crosses the skin and raises the hair on your arms. The air here is trapped, insulated by tons of earth piled high above the vault. It smells of wet stone, of ancient mortar, and the faint, lingering metallic tang of bronze from the statues that line the approach. Run your hand along the wall of the tunnel. The stone is rough and uneven, pitted by the years. It feels clammy, sweating its own cold moisture. This tunnel is not merely a passageway, it is a decompression chamber. For the athlete standing here waiting for the signal, this darkness is a final cocoon. Behind him lies the world of prayers, rituals, and the comforts of the palestra. Ahead, at the end of this stone throat, lies the blinding, unforgiving reality of the track. The acoustics in the tunnel are strange and warping. A footstep here does not sound like a footstep. It sounds like a heartbeat. Thud. Thud, thud. The sound bounces off the curved ceiling and wraps around the listener, creating an intimate, claustrophobic atmosphere. You can hear the rustle of a tunic, the shifting of weight from one foot to another, the sharp intake of breath. These small sounds are magnified, becoming significant and heavy. Look ahead. The end of the tunnel is a perfect rectangle of white fire. The contrast is painful to the eyes. The sun has now fully risen over the stadium floor, turning the sand into a sheet of gold. From inside the cool, blue shadows of the crypty, that rectangle looks like another world, a furnace of heat and light. The darkness of the tunnel frames it, making the destination seem both terrifying The sensory experience of standing in this tunnel is defined by this duality. Your back is cold, pressed against the damp air of the shadows, while your face feels the radiant heat pushing in from the entrance. It is the feeling of being suspended between two states of being. You are hidden yet about to be exposed. You are alone, yet about to be judged by thousands. The darkness of the crypte offers a final moment of privacy, a place where the mask can slip for just a second before the performance begins. There is a heaviness in this shade. It is the weight of history. How many thousands of men have stood in this exact spot, shivering in the cool air, staring at that same rectangle of light? You can almost smell their fear. It mixes with the damp limestone, a sour, electric scent that never quite fades. The silence here is thick, pressing against the eardrums, demanding attention. It is a silence that wants to be broken. And then it is. From somewhere high above, perhaps from the steps of the Temple of Zeus or the raised platform of the judges, a sound cuts through the morning air. It is not a human voice, it is the salpinx. The trumpet of ancient Greece is not the melodious, brassy instrument of later orchestras. It is a long, straight tube of bronze with a bone mouthpiece designed for war and for commands. Its sound is visceral. It is a harsh, rhythmic blare that vibrates in the chest. Tara, tahara. The notes are short, sharp, and aggressive. They do not float, they strike. Listen to how the sound travels. It starts as a piercing shockwave near the source, shattering the morning calm. As it rolls across the open expanse of the altus, it loses some of its metallic edge, becoming a rolling, echoing boom that bounces off the hillsides. It reaches the entrance of the crypte and funnels inside, distorted by the stone walls. In the confined space of the tunnel, the trumpet sounds incredibly loud, a call to arms that cannot be ignored. The sound acts as a physical trigger. The heart, which had been slowing in the cool dark, suddenly kicks against the ribs. The stomach tightens. The salpinx is the voice of the games themselves. It signals that the waiting is over. The truce of the mind is finished. The struggle of the body has begun. Out sound of the trumpet stirs the beast. You can hear the low, distant rumble of the crowd beginning to wake. It is like the sound of the ocean rising, a murmur of thousands of voices turning their attention toward the track. But inside the tunnel, the echo of the brass horn lingers, fading slowly into the damp stone. It leaves a ringing silence in its wake, a void that is even more tense than before. The athlete takes a step forward. The sand crunches under his foot. A different sound now, sharper, more purposeful. He moves from the cool, grey room of the crypt toward the searing white gate of the stadium. The smell of the damp earth recedes, replaced by the dry, dusty scent of the sun-baked track. The trumpet sounds again, closer this time, more urgent. It is a heartbeat of bronze driving the world forward. The transition is absolute. One moment, you are in the shadows, wrapped in the cold, private history of the tunnel. The next, you step across the line of shadow and light. The sun hits you like a physical blow, hot and heavy on the oiled skin. The roar of the crowd, which was a distant murmur, explodes into a wall of sound. But the memory of the crypt remains, the cool stone, the damp air, and the first terrifying note of the trumpet that severed the morning silence. The hippodrome is a vast, open mouth of the earth, stretching out alongside the swollen banks of the Alpheios River. Unlike the enclosed intimacy of the stadium where the runners compete, this place feels wild, a sprawling plain of flat land that seems to go on forever. The air here is heavier, laden with moisture that rises from the river reeds and clings to the low ground. But that damp, green scent is overwhelmed by a much more aroma. It is a smell that prickles the back of the nose and stirs an ancient, instinctual wariness in the gut. It is the smell of raw power. It is the smell of horses. Walk with me into the assembly area, the paddock behind the starting gates. The ground here has been churned into a dark, muddy paste by hundreds of impatient hooves. The scent is thick and complex. It begins with the musk of the animals, a deep, savory odor of warm fur and living skin. It is the smell of sweat and salty, steaming off the flanks of the stallions as they pace and toss their heads. Mingled with this is the rich, earthy decay of manure, not unpleasant in this context, but grounding, a reminder of the biology that drives the machine. And then there is the leather. Close your eyes and imagine the smell of the tack, the reins, the harnesses, the straps that bind the yoke. It is old leather, cured in tannins and rubbed daily with sweet almond oil and beeswax to keep it supple. It has a fragrance like dark honey and smoke. You can hear the creak of it as the horses their weight. Creak, snap, creak. It is the sound of tension. The leather is the only thing connecting the will of the man to the fury of the beast. The horses themselves are terrified and terrifying. These are not gentle creatures of the plough. They are war engines, bred for explosive speed and aggression. Their coats are groomed to a high sheen, reflecting the sun like polished copper, obsidian, and spun gold. You can see the veins standing necks like cords of rope, pulsing with the rapid rhythm of their hearts. Thump, 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 thump. Stand close enough, and you can feel the heat radiating from their bodies, a physical wall of warmth that pushes against the cool river breeze. Steam rises from their nostrils in the morning air. Watch the way their ears flicker, swiveling back and forth, catching every sound, the shout of a groom, the rattle of a wheel, the distant murmur of the crowd. They are rolling their eyes, showing the whites, a sign of the madness that is about to be unleashed. The charioteers, standing in their light wicker baskets, are statues of concentration. They smell of olive oil and dust, their hands wrapped in the long reins, their bodies leaning back to counter the pull of the animals. They are whispering to the horses, low, soothing nonsense words meant to keep the explosion contained for just a few moments longer. The air is thick with this communication, a silent language of touch and vibration between man and beast. Ahead of this chaotic sea of muscle and wood stands the husplex. It is a marvel of engineering, a mechanical spider web designed to bring order to chaos. It is shaped like the prow of a great ship, a triangle that points down the track, ensuring that every chariot, no matter its position, travels the same distance to the turn. The architecture of the start is a study in potential energy. Look at the ropes. They are thick, twisted hemp, stretched taut across the lanes. They vibrate slightly in the wind, humming with the tension of the mechanism. They are the dam holding back the flood. At the center of the structure there is an altar, and behind it, the mechanism that controls it all. It is a system of torsion, of twisted fibers and heavy bronze weights. There is a specific sound that dominates this moment of waiting. It is the sound of silence fighting against noise. The crowd in the distance is hushed, waiting for the signal. The charioteers have stopped their whispering. The only sounds are the stamping of hooves and the metallic jingle of the bits in the horses' mouths. Clink, clink. It is a small, sharp sound, that massive weight, the silence. Focus on the mechanism itself. At the far end of the prow, a bronze eagle rests on the ground, its wings folded. At the starting line, a bronze dolphin hangs suspended in the air, heavy and waiting to fall. These are the signalmen of the gods. The tension in the ropes is palpable. You can almost feel the fibers stretching, groaning under the strain. The wood of the gates is dark and weathered by the wheels of past races. It smells of resin and dry rot, a stark contrast to the living smell of the horses. The silence stretches. It pulls tight like a bowstring. The sun beats down on the back of your neck. The dustiness in the air. Time seems to distort, slowing down until every second feels like an hour. The horses know. They can feel the shift in the atmosphere. Their muscles bunch under their skin, rippling like water disturbed by a stone. They drop their heads, digging their back hooves into the soft earth, seeking purchase. They are ready to launch. And then the mechanism triggers. It is not explosion, but a mechanical thwack. The bronze eagle rises, soaring up on its pole as the counterweights drop. The bronze dolphin falls, striking the ground with a dull, heavy thud. The ropes slash down. The release is instantaneous. The Hesplex has opened the world. The sound that follows is not a noise. It is a physical assault. It is the sound of thunder rolling across the earth. But it is a thunder made of bone and wood and iron. The ground beneath your feet does not just vibrate. It jumps. It is a seismic tremor that travels up through the soles of your sandals and rattles your teeth. 40 chariots, 160 horses. In a single heartbeat, they surge forward. The sound is a chaotic roar of hooves striking the hard-packed earth. Dugga dugga dugga. It is a wall of percussion, dense and overwhelming. You can hear the cracking of whips, shouting like gunshots, cutting through the heavy bass of the hooves. You can hear the scream of the axles, the wood groaning and shrieking as the wheels spin into a blur. The dust rises instantly. It is not the fine white powder of the stadium, but a heavy brown grit. It billows up in a great, choking cloud, swallowing the chariots whole. For a moment, you cannot see them. You can only hear the violence of their passage. The smell of the dust is intense, dry, mineral, and choking. It coats your tongue and stings your eyes. But then something magical happens. The race moves away. Because the hippodrome is so vast, The sound does not stay static. It travels. Stand still at the starting line, amidst the settling dust and the deep ruts carved into the earth, and listen to the physics of the sound. The roar which was deafening a moment ago begins to recede. It changes pitch. It deepens. It becomes a drone. This is the speed of silence. It is the vacuum left in the wake of the storm. The thunder of the hooves grows fainter, rolling down the long straight of the track towards the distant turning post. It sounds like a summer storm moving out to sea. The individual sounds, the whips, the axles, the shouts, merge into a single, continuous hum. It is a rhythmic hypnotic sound. Rum, rum. The further away they get, the more the silence of the landscape asserts itself again. The cicadas, which had ceased their song in the face of the clamor, begin to chirp tentatively. The wind returns, rustling the reeds of the river. But underneath it all, there is still that distant, fading vibration. Watch the cloud of dust moving away from you. It hangs low over the track, a golden folden fog in the sunlight, marking the passage of the ghosts. The horses are now small shapes in the distance, their legs moving in a blur that the eye cannot track. They look like a single organism, a many-legged beast flowing over the ground like water. The sensory experience shifts from the immediate violence of the start to a strange, detached observation. You are no longer in the center of the storm. You are watching it from the shore. The air around you is still swirling with the disturbed currents, but the source of the energy has gone. The smell of the sweat and the manure lingers, hanging heavy in the stillness, but the heat of the body's been replaced by the heat of the sun. As the chariots reach the far turn, the sound changes again. It becomes muffled, blocked by the distance and the curve of the earth. It is a soft, rhythmic pulsing now, like the heartbeat of the valley itself. You find yourself straining to hear it, leaning into the silence. It is a ghostly echo, a memory of a sound rather than the sound itself. This fading is where the true beauty of the race lies. It is not in the collision or the victory, but in the passage. It is the realization of how quickly presence becomes absence. One moment, the world is full of noise and fury, of glistening skin and snapping leather. The next, there is only the empty track, the settling dust, and the distant, fading murmur of thunder rolling away into the edges of the world. The silence that returns to the starting line is profound. It is a silence that feels wider, deeper, and more empty than before. The ropes of the Hesplex lie slack on the ground, their purpose fulfilled. The bronze dolphin rests in the dirt. The earth stops trembling, and all that is left is the whisper of the wind in the olive trees and the faint, receding drumbeat of the race, moving further and further away until it is nothing more than a vibration in the air, a secret told to the horizon. The air in the stadium has changed. The violent, explosive thunder of the chariot race has faded into distant hills, leaving behind a stillness that feels suspended, like a pendulum at the very top of its arc. We return now to the human scale, to the study of the solitary figure against the vastness of the arena. This is the domain of the pentathlon, the search for the perfect athlete, the man who possesses both the strength of the lion and the grace of the eagle. Consider the discus thrower. He stands in the center of the throwing circle, a ring of hard-packed earth that defines his world. In his hand he holds the discos. It is a heavy plate of solid bronze, cast in the fires of a foundry far away, polished until it gleams like a shield. Feel the weight of it in your mind. It is cool and dense, a concentrated mass of metal that pulls the arm down. The surface is smooth, but not slippery. It has been rubbed with sand to give it a tooth, a texture that bites into the skin of the palm. The athlete is a study in potential energy. He stands still for a moment, his toes gripping the dust, his eyes fixed on the horizon. He is visualizing the flight path, drawing on the air with his mind before his body follows. Then the movement begins. It is not a sudden jerk, but a slow, fluid winding up. He brings the discus across his body, cradling it like a precious thing, his torso twisting, his muscles stretching like the cords of a lyre. Watch the coil. He lowers his center of gravity, bending his knees, sinking into the earth. The bronze disc swings back, far behind him, extending his reach to its absolute limit. His spiral now, a spring compressed to its tension. You can see the strain in the tendons of his neck, the way the latches the sheen of sweat on his shoulder. He is a statue coming to life, the discobolus of Myron breathing and moving before your eyes. And then the unwind. It happens in a blur of rotational force. He pivots on the ball of his foot, spinning the world around him. The dust swirls at his ankles. The centrifugal force pulls at his arm, trying to tear the weight from his grip, but he holds on, guiding the momentum, channeling the chaos into a single, directed purpose. Listen for the release. It is not a shout. It is a sound that cuts the air. Whoosh. It is a high, thin whistle, the song of the bronze slicing through the wind. The disc leaves his hand and climbs, a golden saucer spinning against the deep blue of the sky. For a few seconds, gravity seems to lose its hold. The disc floats, riding the air currents, its rotation keeping it stable and true. It catches the sun, flashing a blinding reflection that travels across the stadium like a signal mirror. Follow it with your eyes as it begins its descent. It does not plummet. It glides, losing altitude with a reluctant grace. When it finally strikes the earth, it lands with a dull, heavy thud, kicking up a small puff of dust that marks the distance. The thrower remains in the circle, his arm still extended in the follow-through, watching the flight of the metal bird he has released. The silence that follows the landing is appreciative, a quiet nod from the crowd to the beauty of the form. The bronze disc lies in the dirt, a silent testament to the marriage of power and balance. But the contest shifts now. The air grows lighter, filled with a different kind of rhythm. We move to the soft sand of the Scama, the pit prepared for the jumpers. In the ancient world, the jump is not merely a test of legs. It is a test of harmony. It is done to music. Can you hear it? The faint, reedy melody of the aulos, the double flute. The player stands to the side, tapping his foot, breathing a rhythmic, hypnotic tune into the instrument. Toodaloo, toodaloo. The notes float over the sand, weaving a structure for the movement. The athlete stands at the head of the runway, but he is not empty-handed. He holds the halters. These are the jumping weights. They are carved from stone or cast from lead, shaped like rounded telephone receivers, or heavy, oblong stones. They are dead weight, pulling the shoulders down, grounding the man. Imagine holding them in your own hands. They are cold, heavy, and unforgiving. They smell of the mineral earth, of lead and granite. To jump with them's a paradox. Surely, to fly one must be light. But the Greeks knew the secrets of momentum. The jumper begins his ritual. He does not run yet. He stands and swings the weights forward and back. Forward and back. Swoosh, swoosh. The sound is heavy and rhythmic, a pendulum counting down the seconds. The lead weights cut the air, creating a low-frequency hum that synchronizes with the flute. The athlete is tuning his body to the weight, finding the frequency where his muscles and the metal become one system. He begins his approach. It is not a frantic sprint, but a bounding run, each step sensing with the swing of the arms. As he reaches the takeoff board, the magic happens. He throws the weights forward, hurling them into the air, and his body follows, pulled by the momentum of the lead. For a heartbeat he is flying. He is suspended in the apex of the jump, arms reaching out, legs tucked under him. Then, just before he hits the sand, he thrusts the weights backward. This violent, backward ejection propels his body forward for those last few critical inches. It is a transfer of energy, a sacrifice of the tool to gain the distance. The weights drop from his hands, thudding into the sand behind him, while his heels slice into the soft earth ahead. Crump. The landing is soft, a collapsing of limbs into the beige dust. The sand sprays up, coating his sweating skin in a fine, gritty layer. The sound of the jump is complex. The slap of feet on the takeboard, the whoosh of the weights, the melody of the flute, and the final, soft impact in the pit. It is a performance of physics and art, a dance with gravity where the heavy lead becomes the wings of the man. As the afternoon wears on, the shadows begin to lengthen, stretching across the track like reaching fingers. The explosive energy of the sprint and the throw gives way to something deeper, something slower. The stadium empties of the equipment, the discs, the javelins, and leaves only the open track and the men who will run the dolly shows the long race. This is the endurance. This is the art of suffering in silence. The runners gather at the starting line, but they do not possess the nervous energy of the sprinters. They are leaner, their ribs showing through their skin like the strakes of a ship. Their faces are calm, almost mask-like. They know that what awaits them is not a burst of glory, but a long, slow conversation with pain. The signal is given, and they begin. The pace is deceptive. It looks slow, a loping, easy stride that eats up the ground with terrifying efficiency. Pat, 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 pat. The sound of their feet on the hard-packed earth is a steady drumbeat, a drone that lulls the mind. There is no frantic rushing, no jostling for position in the first lap. They settle into a line, a snake of bodies moving in unison. Watch the leader. He runs with a trance-like efficiency. His arms swing low and loose. His head is up, his eyes unfocused, looking not at the track, but at something far on the stadium walls. He is entering the rhythm. Breath in for 2 steps, breath out for 2 steps. Ha ha. Hoo hoo. The sound of the breathing becomes the dominant music of the race. It is a collective respiration, a steam engine of human lungs working in the heat. The sensory world of the long-distance runner narrows down to the immediate. The smell of the dust kicked up by the man in front, the taste of salt on the upper lip, sharp and stinging. The feeling of the sun-baked shoulders, a relentless, heavy hand pressing down. The sweat does not bead. It runs in rivets, cutting channels through the dust on their legs, dripping from their chins to leave dark spots on the dry earth. As the laps accumulate, 7, 12, 20, 24, the runners begin to blur. The stadium becomes a tunnel. The cheering of the crowd fades into white noise, a distant roar like the ocean that no longer registers. All that exists is the rhythm, the steady, hypnotic cadence of the stride. The world is reduced to the next step, and the next, and the next. There is a beauty in this monotony. It is the beauty of the river that cuts the canyon, the patience of the water wearing down the stone. You can see the fatigue setting in, the way the heads begin to bob, the way the knees lift a little less high. But they do not stop. They held aloft by the collective will, by the ancient promise of the race. The sound of the pack passing is a soft, rushing wind. It is the sound of persistence. It is the sound of the human spirit refusing to yield to the desire for rest. They are ghosts moving through the golden haze of the late afternoon, circling the track like planets orbiting a star, bound by the gravity of the distance. In the slow, steady pace of the runners, we see the other side of the Greek ideal. Not the flash of the thunderbolt, but the endurance of the earth itself. The race is a meditation, a prayer prayed with the feet, whispered into the dust of Olympia, step after step, until the sun begins to touch the western hills, and the long shadows finally swallow the track. The sun has become heavy in the sky, a ripe, blood-orange fruit hanging low over the western horizon. We have reached the twilight of the combat, the hour of the pancration. The stadium, once a cauldron of white heat, is now painted in the bruising colors of the late afternoon. Deep purples, burnt ochres, and long, stretching grays. The shadows of the pillars and the spectators lengthen, creeping across the sand like the hands of a sundial, reaching out to touch the center of the scammer. The final struggle is taking place. This is not the clean, geometric beauty of the discus or the rhythmic grace of the runner. This is the pancration, the all-power combat, a raw and primal negotiation between two bodies pushed to their absolute limit. The air in the pit is thick with the copper scent of blood and the sour, ammonia tang of exhaustion. The sand, once pristine and raked, is now a chaotic map of the struggle, churned into deep ruts, and stained dark where sweat and spittle have fallen. Watch the movement. It is no longer fast. The explosive of the morning has burned away, leaving behind a slow, grinding determination. The fighters move through the thickening air as if they are wading through water. Their skin is coated in a thick paste of oil and dirt, making them look like molded from the earth itself. Every grapple is a test of friction, slippery limb sliding against slippery limb. You can hear the sound of the impact, a dull, wet flesh striking flesh, sickeningly intimate in the quiet moments between the crowd's roars. It is a contest of heavy breathing. Huh, huff. The sound is ragged, torn from the lungs with a desperation that speaks of the body's rebellion. You can see the ribs heaving the mud-caked skin. You can see the muscles trembling, vibrating with the effort of holding a lock or resisting a choke. It is a slow-motion dance of pain. A hand grips a wrist, knuckles white and straining, digging into the tendons. A forehead presses against a shoulder, grinding the skin. The shadows continue to stretch, draping the fighters in a veil of darkness, turning them into silhouettes against the fading light, two shades wrestling in the gloom. And then, the moment of conclusion. It is rarely a grand, theatrical gesture. In the twilight, it is often a small, quiet surrender, a finger raised to the sky, a tap on the shoulder. The release of tension is immediate. The tangled limbs unravel, the bodies separate, slumping back into the dust, reclaiming their individual shapes. In this silence, before the crowd realizes the end and erupts, there is a profound, sacred beat. It is the respect between rivals. Watch the man who has won. He does not dance in triumph. He is too tired, too humbled by the difficulty of the task. He kneels in the sand, his chest heaving, his eyes stinging with sweat. He reaches out a hand that, moments ago, was a weapon intended to break bones. The loser takes it. There is a tactile connection here that transcends language. Palm to palm, grit to grit. The squeeze is firm, a silent acknowledgement of the shared suffering. They look at each other through swollen eyes, their faces masks of dirt and blood. In that look, there is no animosity. There is only the deep, knowing brotherhood of those who have walked into the fire together and survived. A nod is exchanged. It is a microscopic movement, a dipping of the chin that says, "You were a mountain. You were a storm." They help each other to stand. Their legs are shaky, their knees buckling under the return of gravity. As they lean on one another for a brief second, you can smell the mixture of their labors, the iron of blood, the salt of tears, the musk of the fight. They are no longer enemies. They are two statues of weariness, standing amidst the ruins of their battle, bound together by the dust that covers them both. Around them, the world is cooling. The sun finally touches the ridge of the Cronian hill, the sacred mount of Kronos that watches over the sanctuary. For a moment, the hill is hallowed in a rim of brilliant, dying fire, backlighting the pine trees so that they look like jagged teeth biting into the sky. And then, the sun slips behind the earth. The drop in temperature is sudden and exquisite. It is a physical caress, a soft, cool hand placed on a fevered brow. You can feel the heat radiating off the stone embankments, rising up to meet the descending chill of the evening air. The sweat on your own skin begins to cool, creating a delightful shiver that runs down the spine. The smell of the stadium changes instantly. The sharp, hot scents of the day, the dry dust, the burning resin, are dampened. In their place rises the smell of the damp earth, the green scent of the river mist returning, and the faint, appetizing aroma of wood smoke drifting from the altars where the evening fires are being lit. The light turns blue, then indigo. The noise of the crowd softens, losing its sharp edges, becoming a murmuring stream of humanity flowing toward the exits. The crickets in the olive groves begin their night song, a rhythmic chirping that weaves through the cooling air. The stadium, so recently a vessel of violence, begins to empty, leaving the two fighters and the churned sand to the gathering dark. The day of the body is over. The night of the spirit is about to begin. Behind the temple of Zeus, in a quiet corner of the Altis, where the shadows have already pooled into deep wells of indigo, stands the tree. It is the Callus Stephanos, the olive of the beautiful crown. It does not look like a treasure. Its trunk is gnarled and twisted, a map of gray bark that looks like flowing water frozen in stone. It is covered in the dust of the sanctuary, and the webs of spiders who weave their silent traps in the sacred branches. But this tree is the heart of the world tonight. A young boy approaches the tree. He is a pious amphitales, a child whose parents are both still living, a symbol of wholeness and luck in a world often broken by early death. He wears a tunic of white linen that seems to glow in the fading light. In his hand he carries a sickle, but it is not the iron tool of a farmer. It is made of solid gold. The metal is soft and heavy, catching the last reflected light of the evening fires and holding it like a captured ember. Listen to the quiet of this ritual. There is no cheering crowd here. There is only the soft rustle of the wind in the silver-green leaves and the breathing of the priests who stand witness. The boy reaches up. He selects a branch, not at random, but one that has been touched by the divine breath of the wind. He brings the golden blade against the wood. Gold is not sharp like iron. The cut is a ritual act, a negotiation between the metal and the living wood. Snick. It is a crisp, wet sound. The blade bites into the bark. A single drop of sap purls on the wound, glimmering like a tear. It smells intensely green and bitter, the raw, vibrant scent of life itself. With a gentle twist, the branch comes free. It falls into the boy's waiting hand, light and flexible. It is nothing more than a twig with a few leaves, yet it carries more weight than all the gold in the treasuries of Delphi. It is the physical manifestation of a god's favor. The victor waits at the edge of the precinct. He has washed the worst of the blood and the mud from his body, but the exhaustion remains, etched into the lines of his face and the slope of his shoulders. He is a vessel that has been emptied of all energy and filled with a strange, floating lightness. When he begins the walk toward the temple of Zeus, his steps are slow and measured. The ground beneath his feet is no longer the yielding sand of the arena. It is the cool, smooth marble of the processional way. The stone sucks the heat from his bare soles, a grounding sensation that connects him to the earth. Ahead of him, the great temple looms against the darkening sky, a mountain of limestone and stucco that seems to breathe in the twilight. The massive columns are like the legs of elephants, solid and immovable. Between them, the flickering light of the oil lamp spills out, painting the steps in dancades of orange and black. He walks through a corridor of sound. The people line the path, but they do not scream as they did in the stadium. They murmur. They whisper his name. It is a sound like the ocean rolling over pebbles, a low, continuous wash of reverence. They reach out to touch the hem of his robe, hoping that some of his kudos, his glory, will rub off on their fingertips like pollen. He smells the incense drifting from the open doors of the temple, a heavy, sweet cloud of frankincense that masks the lingering scent of his own sweat. He feels small before the architecture of the gods. He is the reason the doors are open. He ascends the steps. Two. Each step is a climbing of the mountain. He enters the pronaos, the vestibule of the temple, where the air is still and thick with the heat of the day that has been trapped by the stone. He stands before the table of ivory and gold where the wreaths have been laid out. The Hellenodikai, the judges in their purple robes, stand waiting. Their faces are solemn. This is not a prize-giving. It is a consecration. The judge lifts the olive wreath. It is such a simple thing. A circle of flexible twigs, the leaves already beginning to curl slightly without the sustenance of the tree. The victor bows his head. He closes his eyes. He feels the moment of contact. The leaves touch his forehead. They are cool, a shocking contrast to his fevered skin. The twigs scratch slightly, a gentle, rough friction that feels incredibly real. It is not the smooth, cold weight of a gold crown, nor the heavy burden of a helmet. It is a living weight. It feels the touch of nature itself claiming him back. For a moment the world stops. The ache in his muscles, the stinging of his wounds, the noise of the crowd outside, it all vanishes. There is only the sensation of the olive leaves resting against his temples. He breathes in the scent of the broken wood, the bitter sap, and the dust of the leaves. It is the smell of the Peloponnese, the smell of home, the smell of the earth that endures long after men have turned to dust. This circle of greenery is a symbol of eternity, not because it lasts forever. It will wither and turn brown in a week, but because it represents the cycle that never ends. The struggle, the victory, the decay, and the rebirth. As he lifts his head, crowned now not as a man but as a hero, he feels the leaves rustle against his hair with the slightest movement. Shh! It is the whisper of the god, telling him that for this one brief, shining moment, he has touched the immortal. He has become part of the story that the trees tell the wind. The great roaring fires of the hecatomb, which once licked the sky with tongues of orange and gold, have now surrendered to the night. What remains is a bed of embers, a vast, breathing carpet of deep crimson. Imagine standing near the great altar of Zeus. The heat is no longer a wall that pushes you back. It is a gentle, radiating warmth, like the body heat of a sleeping animal. The flames have done their work. They have consumed the thighs of the bulls and carried the savory smoke up to the nostrils of the gods, and now they rest. Watch closely the behavior of a dying fire. The light does not flicker anymore. It pulses. It is a slow, rhythmic throbbing, a hot light that glows brighter with every breath of the wind and dims again as the air settles. The colors are profound. There is the deepest red of the pomegranate seed, the burnt orange of the setting sun, and the creeping velvet grey ash that begins to coat the coals like a shroud of snow. The air around the altar is thick with the scent of completion. The heavy, greasy aroma of roasting meat has dissipated, carried away by the breeze toward the sea. In its place is the dry, clean smell of carbon. It is the scent of a wood stove on a winter morning, or the smell of a forest after a lightning strike. It is a smell that signals the end of something. Occasionally, a piece of wood, burned through to its core, collapses with a soft crump. A shower of sparks rises up, swirling into the darkness like a miniature galaxy, only to fade and vanish before they reach the height of the temple roof. The smoke has changed too. It is no longer the thick, black plumes of the sacrifice. It is a thin, blue wisp, a ghostly ribbon that curls lazily into the night air. It dances around the columns of the temples, wrapping them in a final, misty embrace before dissolving into the ether. This smoke carries the memories of the prayers that were offered. It is the physical residue of hope and gratitude, drifting away to become part of the atmosphere. As you stand there, watching the glow fade, you can feel the energy of the sanctuary shifting. The frenetic, high-pitched vibration of the festival is grounding it. The fire is returning to the earth. The ash, whole white, settles on the stones, a fine powder that will eventually be swept up and added to the altar, layer upon layer, century upon century. It is the dust of history, cooling the dark. Turn your back on the dying embers now, and look toward the edges of the altar. The great tide of humanity is receding. For days, this valley has been a chaotic sea of voices, a collision of dialects from every corner of the known world. But now, the tide goes out. You can hear the sound of the departure, but it is distant and muffled. It is the creaking of wooden wheels on the dirt roads, the groan of axles bearing the weight of tents and supplies. It is the soft, rhythmic clopping of donkeys and horses, their hooves striking the stones with a sleepy cadence. Clip-clop, clip-clop. The voices of the pilgrims are low. There is no shouting now, no bargaining, no debating. There is only the quiet murmur of people who are exhausted and filled with wonder. They speak in hushed tones, as if afraid to break the spell of what they have witnessed. They move out of the valley, winding their way along the banks of the Alfeos and the Cladios, their torches forming rivers of fire that flow into the darkness. From the vantage point of the Cronian Hill, these lines of light look like veins of lava cooling on the side of a volcano. They drift further and further away, until the individual lights merge into a single, faint glow on the horizon, and then finally disappear. Above them and above you, the true roof of the sanctuary reveals itself. The smoke has cleared, and the Greek sky is a vast, terrifying dome of obsidian. Without the glare of the city fires or the haze of the midday sun, the stars are overwhelming. They do not just dot the sky, they crush it with their numbers. The Milky Way is a slash of spilled milk, a bruised purple and white stain that stretches from one mountain peak to the other. These are the same stars that watched the first race, and they are the same stars that will watch the last. They are cold, distant, and utterly indifferent to the victories of men. yet their presence feels benevolent tonight. They offer a perspective that is necessary. The glory of the athlete is bright and brief, like the spark from the fire, but the silence of the stars is eternal. The constellation of Orion hangs low, the hunter forever chasing his prey across the heavens. The Pleiades cluster together like a gathering of nymphs. The light from these stars takes 1,000 years to reach the valley floor, falling softly onto the white marble of the temples and the dark, upturned earth of the stadium. It paints the world in shades of silver and blue. Under this canopy, the sanctuary is small, a precious jewel box left open to the universe. And so, the world returns to the quiet peace of the Peloponnese. The transition is slow, like the closing of a heavy book. The silence reclaims the valley inch by inch. First it takes the stadium. The shouting is gone. The dust has settled back in the ruts of the track. The embankment, where thousands sat and cheered, is now a grassy slope, empty and still. If you were to walk there now, your sandals would make no sound in the soft earth. The ghosts of the runners have fled, leaving only the wind to run its laps around the course. Then the silence takes the palestra. The sand in the wrestling pit is cool and damp. The oil has dried on the stone benches. The echoes of the struggle have been absorbed into the porous limestone, stored away for another 4 years. The water in the bathing troughs is still, reflecting the moon like a series of black mirrors. Finally, the silence reaches the heart of the Altus. The statues of the victors, the bronze and marble men who stand on their plinths, seem to relax. In the daylight they are posing, showing off their muscles to the crowd. But in the dark they are just metal and stone, keeping a lonely vigil. The wind moves through the wild olive trees, the cotinos, and the sound is a gentle, dry hissing. Shh! It is the trees whispering the oldest lullaby in the world. The natural sounds of the landscape, which had been drowned out by the noise of the festival, begin to reassert themselves. The cicadas have finished their day song, but the crickets have begun the night watch. Their chirping is a rhythmic, electric pulse that seems to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. You can hear the river again. The Alpheus is swollen with the summer melt, moving heavy and slow over its stones. It gurgles and splashes, a wet, liquid sound that speaks of continuity. The river does not care about the games. It flows as it has always flowed, washing the feet of the valley. The scent of the night is cool and green. The smell of the sweat and the blood and the roasted meat has faded, replaced by the damp breath of the river reeds and the resinous tang of the pines on the hill. The earth breathes out the heat it stored during the day, creating a low mist that clings to the ground, swirling around your ankles. Olympia is sleeping. It is a deep, dreamless slumber. The gods have been fed. The heroes have been crowned. The truce has been honored. For now, there is nothing left to do. The tension that held the world together for these 5 days has snapped, leaving behind a relaxation that is absolute. As you stand in the center of this sleeping world, you feel the weight of the silence. It is not an empty silence. It is full. It is full of the memory of what has passed and the promise of what will return. The Olympiad is over, but the cycle continues. The moon climbs higher, casting long, sharp shadows on white stones. The fire is out, but the warmth remains in the rock. The runners are gone, but the track remains. And in the quiet dark, the heart of the sanctuary beats on, slow and steady, waiting for the return of the sun. The last echo of the chariot wheels has faded, and the crowds have long since departed the valley of Olympia. We gently close the linen-bound book, placing it back upon its shelf, where the history remains still and silent. The story is over now, and you are safe. There is nothing left for you to do but drift. The embers in the fireplace are glowing low, casting long, peaceful shadows across the library walls. If you have found rest here tonight, consider leaving a sign of your presence before you sleep, or a word, so you may find your seat by the fire waiting for you tomorrow. Sleep now. Good night.